The cold on Riley's side of the bed at 2 in the morning was the only thing I could feel. Lately, she had been making these excursions with her friends more and more often, justifying them as a necessity to relieve stress after work or a desire to socialize with her fellow students. We had been married for only 2 months, and I was already spending more nights alone than together with her. My name is Nick Dalton. I am 38 years old, and I own a small construction company in Millbrook, Maine. It is honest work. I build decks, renovate kitchens, and fix everything that the harsh New England winters destroy. Riley works in the human resources department of some tech startup. She constantly talks about synergy and optimizing human capital, as if people are just items on a spreadsheet. My phone on the nightstand vibrated like an angry wasp. The name Cal appeared on the screen. Cal Henderson is my best friend from high school. He is the kind of person who would help hide a body without asking unnecessary questions. Although, fortunately, we have never had to test that theory. "Nikki, are you asleep?" His voice sounded tense and nervous, which made everything inside me clench. I answered that I wasn't anymore and asked what had happened. He told me to go to the Pulse Club immediately because Riley was there. Pulse was a place downtown where young people pretend they are still in college. It wasn't exactly a usual spot for my wife, but I thought Tess might have dragged her there. Tess is a fitness trainer, all covered in self-tanner and Instagram poses. Riley claimed she was going out with the girls. Cal was silent for a long time. Too long. I demanded he tell me the truth. "She's here, Nick, with your brother." Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Evan. My younger brother, the eternal loser who had been crashing at a friend's place since his last girlfriend kicked him out. He had always been jealous of everything good in my life. I asked what he meant by, "with him." Cal explained that they were dancing and hugging in a way that was not at all familial. I sat up in bed, staring at the empty space where my wife should have been. The rational part of my brain tried to find innocent explanations. Maybe they had met by accident. Maybe she was just being friendly. Maybe Cal was exaggerating everything. But deep down, where understanding comes before thoughts, I already knew everything. Cal asked if I was still there. I answered affirmatively. I looked around our bedroom, at the wedding photos on the dresser, at Riley's clothes scattered on her side of the room as if she owned the place. Legally, she did. Joint property and all that. I told my friend not to do anything, and warned him that I was on my way. He tried to talk me out of it, but I cut him off, saying that I had to see it with my own eyes. I hung up and sat in the darkness, letting reality fully settle into my consciousness. 2 months. We had been married for exactly 2 months, and my wife was making out with my brother in some seedy club. The thing about betrayal is that it always smells familiar. Evan had been using the same cheap aftershave since high school, and I had smelled it on Riley's things for weeks. I convinced myself that she was just hugging him goodbye when he came over, showing familial affection. God, what an idiot I had been. I dressed in the dark, pulling on jeans and a black t-shirt. If I was going to catch my wife cheating, I might as well dress appropriately. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked terrible. Stubble, bags under my eyes. The typical look of a man who had started to realize that his marriage was a mistake, but didn't want to admit it. The drive to Pulse took 15 minutes through empty streets. Millbrook wasn't a noisy metropolis, especially at 2:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. The club's neon sign cast pink and blue shadows on the wet sidewalk, and the bass could be heard half a block away. I parked across the street and called Cal. He said he was waiting on the northwest corner of the balcony, from where the entire dance floor was visible. They were still there, still just as close to each other. I took a deep breath and headed for the entrance. A bouncer who looked like a guy who benches a subcompact car for fun barely glanced at my ID. The music hit me with physical force as I went up to the balcony, pushing through groups of drunk students and divorced men trying to reclaim their 20s. Cal was waiting by the railing with a bottle of beer, looking extremely uncomfortable. He silently nodded toward the dance floor. There they were. Riley was wearing a tight red dress that I had never seen before, an outfit that accentuated the figure she had been working on with Tess. Her blonde hair was loose over her shoulders, and she moved to the music with a confidence that she never showed around me anymore. And Evan, my younger brother with his gym-pumped arms and that arrogant smile that had gotten him into trouble since childhood. He had his hands on Riley's hips, pulling her close and whispering something in her ear, making her throw her head back and laugh. They weren't dancing like relatives. They weren't even dancing like friends. They were acting like lovers. I asked Cal how long this had been going on, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. He said about an hour. At first, they were just talking at the bar, but then it escalated into this. As I watched, Evan spun Riley around and pulled her back against him, wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned into him with her eyes closed, completely lost in the moment. When she turned, they were face to face, just inches apart, and then they kissed. It wasn't a familial peck on the cheek or a friendly goodbye. It was a real kiss, deep and greedy, the kind that leaves no doubt about the nature of the relationship between two people. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. It wasn't rage, but rather clarity, a cruel, crystalline understanding that erased months of self-deception and false hope. Cal's voice sounded like it was coming from far away. I took out my phone and started recording. The video quality in the dim club light wasn't the best, but it was good enough. Enough to capture Riley's fingers in Evan's hair. Enough to show how she pressed against him, as if she couldn't get close enough. Enough to document every lie about working late and girls' nights out. Cal asked what I was doing. I said I was gathering evidence. I filmed for about 3 minutes from different angles, making sure both faces were clearly visible. Riley and Evan were so absorbed in each other that they never once looked up at the balcony. They didn't notice the husband and brother documenting their betrayal from 30 feet away. When I had enough material, I put my phone away and headed for the stairs. Cal hurried after me, asking where I was going. I said home. He was surprised that I didn't want to confront them right then and there. I stopped at the top of the stairs, looking back at the dance floor where my wife was still pressed against my brother, as if they were the only two people in the world. Not yet, I said. Sometimes revenge is served not with a knife, but with a camera. The drive home became a succession of empty streets and frantic thoughts. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the video had already been sent to 3 recipients: my lawyer, Evelyn Marsh, my personal email, and cloud storage. The beauty of modern technology is that evidence doesn't just disappear because you want it to. I sat in the car, looking at the house that Riley and I had bought only 6 months earlier. Back then, we were so enthusiastic, talking about children, Christmas mornings, and growing old together on the porch. Now the building looked like a crime scene waiting to be investigated. My phone beeped, a message from Evelyn. She had received the video and wrote that we needed to talk first thing in the morning, and she asked me not to do anything stupid that night. It was too late for that advice. I figured I had already done the stupidest thing by marrying Riley Brennan. But that was about to change. I didn't go to sleep. Instead, I sat in my home office, converted from a second-floor bedroom, and planned. By sunrise, I had a strategy that Sun Tzu himself would have been proud of. First, I called the bank and froze all our joint accounts. Every credit card, every checking account, and every credit line we had opened as a married couple. The customer service representative was understanding when I explained that I suspected fraudulent activity. I was told to come in and sign paperwork. I promised to be there when they opened. Then I called Evelyn Marsh. Evelyn was 73 years old, sharp as a tack, and had been practicing family law in Millbrook for 40 years. She had seen every kind of marital disaster and was no longer surprised by anything. She watched my video and confirmed that the situation was extremely clear. I asked how quickly we could start the process. Maine has a no-fault divorce system, but adultery can still affect property division and alimony. With such clear evidence, we could file immediately. I told her to proceed. Evelyn reminded me that my wife had rights, including the right to remain in the marital home during the proceedings, and that we couldn't simply kick her out. I looked around the office. The desk I had built myself, the bookshelves I had installed, the windows I had replaced last winter. Everything in this house bore the marks of my hands, my sweat, and my labor. I asked what would change if she left voluntarily. Evelyn paused for a moment, noted that it would significantly change the case, and warned me against illegal actions. I assured her that I wasn't planning anything illegal, just something creative. After talking to the lawyer, I took care of the house itself. I changed the locks on all the doors, but I didn't throw Riley's belongings out on the lawn. That would have been too obvious and could have created legal problems. Instead, I carefully packed all her things into boxes and stacked them in the garage. I also left a note there, explaining that she could pick them up at a convenient time. The text of the note was a model of passive-aggressive politeness. I wrote, "Riley, I have packed your things. Please coordinate their pickup with Evelyn Marsh. I think it's best if we don't see each other while we resolve our differences. Nick. By 8 in the morning, I was already signing documents at the bank. By 9, I was at Evelyn's office, filing for divorce. By 10, I was buying new deadbolts and a video doorbell system at the hardware store. Riley didn't come home until noon. I was in my workshop in the basement when I heard the sound of her car, followed by the sound of a key in the lock. That was followed by confusion and growing irritation as she realized the key wasn't turning. She started knocking, then pounding on the door and shouting, "Nick! Nick! Open up! What the hell is going on?" I took my time going upstairs, stopped to grab a cup of coffee, and checked my appearance in the hallway mirror. I looked calm, well-rested, and completely in control. It's amazing how 8 hours of righteous anger can transform a man's face. When I opened the door, Riley was standing on the porch in that same red dress she had worn the night before. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a complete mess. She looked exactly as she should, like a woman who had spent the night where she had no business being. "What's with the locks?" she demanded, pushing past me into the hallway. "Security upgrade. You never know who might try to break into your house." She spun around, her eyes flashing with anger mixed with something else. Maybe guilt or fear. "Don't be a smartass, Nick. Why doesn't my key work anymore?" "Because this isn't your home anymore." I handed her the note I had prepared in advance, along with a copy of the divorce papers that Evelyn had filed that morning. Riley's face went through several shades as she studied the documents. "You're not serious about this, are you?" "More than serious. Your things are already in the garage. You have 24 hours to arrange for their pickup." "Nick, whatever you think you saw." "I didn't imagine anything, Riley. I recorded it all on video. Want to see?" Her face went pale instantly. I hadn't stayed at the club long, but it was long enough to capture my wife pressed up against my brother on the dance floor. Riley sank helplessly onto the couch, the divorce papers scattering on the floor. For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked, as if she had finally realized the magnitude of what she had done. But then she went on the offensive. "You had no right to spy on me." "I had every right. You are my wife. At least, you were until this moment." "It wasn't at all the way it looks from the outside." I took out my phone and played the recording. "Really? Because in the video, it looks like you two are about to make love right there, in the middle of all those dancing people." "We were just dancing." Riley jumped up and started pacing the room. I could see her frantically searching for an excuse, a way to wiggle out of this so she wouldn't lose everything. "Okay, fine. Maybe the situation got a little out of hand, but it was just one night, Nick. A stupid, regrettable mistake. We can get through this." "No. We can't." "Don't be so dramatic. Every marriage has problems. That's what couples therapy is for." I laughed, and the sound was so harsh that she flinched. "Therapy, Riley? You cheated on me with my own brother just 2 months after the wedding. There's no cure for that." "I didn't cheat. We never actually slept together." She nodded hopefully, as if grasping at a lifeline. "That's also a lie." I cut her off. "I've been smelling Evan's cologne on you for weeks. I've seen the way you look at each other when you think I'm not paying attention. Last night wasn't the beginning. It's just the time you finally let your guard down and got caught." All her resolve instantly evaporated. She collapsed onto the couch again, covering her head with her hands. "What do you want from me, Nick?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I want you to disappear. The house belongs to me. I bought it before the marriage and I have all the documentation to prove it." "But we're married. I have legal rights." "You did. You gave them up when you decided to explore your options with my brother." Just then, my phone rang. Evan's name appeared on the screen. I smiled. Perfect timing. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Hey there, little brother." "Nick, we need to talk." Evan's voice was tense and nervous. He clearly knew that I knew everything. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Let's meet somewhere." I looked at Riley, who was staring at the phone like a venomous snake about to strike. "Why don't you come over here? Riley's already here. Let's have a nice little family chat." "Nick, I don't think that's a good idea." "And I think it's a great idea. In fact, I insist on your visit." I hung up and turned to Riley. "He'll be here in 20 minutes. That gives you just enough time to explain to me how this happened, and you'd better start talking, or I'll send that video to your parents, your friends, and your boss." Riley's eyes widened in horror. She worked for a small company where everyone knew everyone else's business. A cheating scandal would destroy her reputation and her career for good. It just happened, she finally choked out. Evan stopped by a few weeks ago when you were working late. We were just talking. He was telling me about his breakup with Jessica, and I was complaining that you and I don't talk anymore. And you decided to comfort each other. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? Help me understand how my wife ended up in my brother's arms. She was crying, mascara streaming down her cheeks in black rivers. You're never home, Nick. You're always working. And when you are home, you're either too tired or too busy with your latest project in the basement. I felt like I was married to a ghost. So you decided to get attention from Evan. He listened to me. He made me feel desirable. And you didn't. Lately, you definitely didn't. I processed this, trying to find a shred of truth in her words that would make me feel guilty or responsible. But all I felt was cold, clean rage. So it's my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault, but that's exactly what you're saying. I worked too hard, so you had no choice but to cheat on me with my brother. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Riley? She opened her mouth to answer, but the doorbell rang. Evan had arrived for our family reunion. I opened the door and saw my brother. He was standing on the porch with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking like he wished he were anywhere but here. Come in, I said cheerfully. The whole gang's together. Evan walked in and immediately noticed Riley on the couch. The look they exchanged was enough to confirm my worst suspicions. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This was a full-fledged, ongoing affair. I closed the door behind him. So, which one of you wants to tell me how long this has been going on? Evan looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. He was 30 years old, but right now, with his slumped shoulders and darting eyes, he looked like a teenager of 16. Nick, I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. You've always been a master of excuses. Remember how you explained why Dad's tools ended up in your friend's garage? Or that dent in Mom's car? That's not fair. Not fair? My laugh made them both flinch. You want to talk about fairness? Fair would have been not touching my wife. Riley stood up, trying to insert herself between us. Nick, please, let's all just calm down and talk about this like adults. Adults? I turned to her, and she involuntarily took a step back. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouses' backs. Adults don't lie about working late while they're fooling around with relatives. We never, Evan began. Don't, I raised my hand, cutting him off. Just shut up. I have video from the Pulse Club. I have circumstantial evidence from weeks, and I have Riley's confession from 10 minutes ago. So spare me your denials. Evan's face twisted. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it did happen. At least you're being honest now. That's something. How long? I asked. They glanced at each other again. She gave a barely perceptible nod, giving him permission to tell the truth. About a month, he said quietly. A month. I let the word hang in the silence. So it started 3 weeks after we got back from our honeymoon? 3 weeks, Evan. I had just married her, and you were already making your move. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? From where I'm standing, it looks like you waited for the ink to dry on the marriage certificate and decided to take my wife for yourself. Evan turned bright red. You don't understand. Riley was deeply unhappy, and you decided to cheer her up? She needed someone to talk to. And the talking led to touching, and the touching led to kissing and everything else I saw last night. Riley started crying again, but I was done caring about her tears. Nick, I know how this looks, but we never wanted it to turn out this way. We tried to stop. And when did you try? A few times. We both felt terrible about it, but not terrible enough to actually stop. It's complicated, Evan interjected. No, it's very simple. You wanted what belonged to me, and you just took it. Just like when we were kids. This has nothing to do with childhood rivalry, doesn't it? To me, it looks like every other time in our past when you were jealous of me and decided you deserved something more than I did. Evan snapped. For a moment, I saw in him that same whiny little brother I had grown up with. Maybe if you had been a better husband, she wouldn't have had to seek comfort elsewhere. The words hung in the air like thick smoke. Riley gasped, and Evan immediately regretted what he had said. There it is, I said quietly. The truth finally comes out. It's my fault for not being a good enough husband. I didn't mean that. That's exactly what you meant. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I was a terrible spouse. Maybe I worked too much and didn't pay enough attention to my wife. Maybe I even deserved to be cheated on. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Our neighbor, Mrs. Morrow, was pretending to water her flowers, but was clearly trying to eavesdrop on our conversation. But here's the thing, Evan. Even if I had been the worst husband in the world, that still wouldn't excuse what you did, because you didn't just betray me. You betrayed our entire family. Mom and Dad are going to be devastated when they find out. Our cousins, aunts, and uncles, everyone who was at our wedding and celebrated with us. They'll all find out that you couldn't keep your hands to yourself when it came to your brother's wife. You won't tell them, Riley said uncertainly. I won't have to. This is Millbrook, not some big New York City. Everyone in town will know by the end of the week. How? I smiled, and the expression on my face must have been extremely unpleasant, because they both looked alarmed. Because I'm not going to hide it, Riley. I'm not going to pretend nothing happened or make up excuses for you. When people ask me why we're getting divorced after only 2 months of marriage, I'm just going to tell them the plain truth. You can't do that, Evan breathed. Watch me. It will completely destroy Riley's reputation. You should have thought about that before you started an affair. Riley collapsed onto the couch again, hiding her face in her hands. This is a nightmare for you, maybe. But for me, it's a long-awaited liberation. My phone buzzed with a message. It was Cal. Everything okay? Saw Evan's car in your driveway. I showed them the screen. Cal already knows. And if Cal knows, then his girlfriend Sarah knows. And by dinner time, half the town will know. Nick, please. Riley looked up at me with swollen, tearful eyes. We can work this out. We'll see a therapist. I'll cut off all contact with Evan. I'll do anything you want. I don't want anything from you, Riley. I want you to leave. This is my house, and you are no longer welcome here. But I have nowhere to go. I looked at Evan. I'm sure you two can figure something out. You're both very good at making plans behind my back. Evan went even paler. Nick, I can't take her in. Jessica kicked me out. I'm sleeping on Tommy's couch. That sounds like your problem, not mine. So where am I supposed to live? Riley's voice cracked into hysteria. There's a motel on Route 9. I hear they rent rooms by the night. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. You made your choice, Riley. Now you have to face the consequences. I walked to the front door and swung it wide open. I think this conversation is over. Neither of them moved. I said it's over, Nick. Evan tried to say something else, but I cut him off. Get out of my house. But we're family, he mumbled. No, we're not. Family doesn't do what you two did. Evan looked like he wanted to argue, but the expression on my face must have convinced him that it wasn't worth the effort. He headed for the door, pausing for a moment to look at Riley. Come on, he said quietly. Riley gathered her purse and the divorce papers, moving slowly as if in a trance. At the door, she turned to me one last time. I did love you, Nick. I really did. No, you didn't. If you had really loved me, you never would have done this. When they left, I stood in the living room, surveying the space that was finally mine again. The silence was deep and peaceful. No more walking on eggshells, wondering why my wife seemed so distant. No more need to make excuses for my brother's increasingly frequent visits. No more pretending everything was fine when the reality said otherwise. I poured myself a beer and sank onto the couch where Riley had been crying just 20 minutes earlier. My phone was buzzing with incoming messages. Cal, my parents, a few other friends. It seemed the rumors were already spreading. I ignored them all. Tomorrow would be time enough to deal with the social fallout of this collapse. I would have to explain to my father and mother how their younger son had destroyed the older one's marriage. Then would begin the long process of rebuilding my life without Riley. But tonight, I was just going to sit in my house, drink my beer, and enjoy the sound of my own thoughts, no longer tortured by questions about what my wife was really doing or who she was with. For the first time in many months, I felt truly at peace. In Millbrook, news spread like wildfire. By Thursday morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls, and Mrs. Morrow had permanently taken up her post at her window to watch everyone who approached my house. Cal came by around 8 with coffee and donuts from Murphy's Bakery. Thought you might need some moral support, he said, sitting down at the kitchen table, as if he had always been there. Rumors travel fast. Sarah ran into Tess at the gym this morning. Turns out Riley called her at 3 in the morning, crying her eyes out, looking for a place to crash. And Tess told her she was too busy with her own dramas to get involved in someone else's. Cal chuckled. It turned out that having an affair with your husband's brother wasn't the best way to strengthen your social standing. I sipped my coffee and thought, so where did she end up? At the Route 9 motel, just like you suggested. Evan's there too, according to Tommy. Together, same motel but separate rooms. Apparently, even they have enough sense not to move in together openly right after being caught. My phone rang. Mom's number appeared on the screen, and my stomach clenched with tension. I have to take this, I said to Cal. My mother's voice was tight with worry. Nick, I just got off the phone with Riley. She's very upset. She said you filed for divorce. Is that true, honey? What happened? You two seemed so happy at the wedding. I looked at Cal, who was pretending to be extremely interested in his donut, though he was clearly listening to every word. Riley was having an affair, Mom. Silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I thought the connection had been lost. An affair? Are you sure? I'm sure. With whom? This was the moment I had been dreading most. With Evan. Again, a long silence. With your brother, Evan? Yes. In the background, I heard my father's voice asking what was wrong. Muffled explanations from my mother were followed by a stream of profanity that would have made a seasoned sailor blush. Your father wants to talk to you, Mom finally said. Dad's voice came through the phone like a growl. Nicholas, tell me you're not serious. I wish I weren't, Dad. That scoundrel. He's 30 years old, and he's still ruining everything he touches. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault. Like hell it isn't. I raised him. I should have taught him to behave decently. Through the noise, I could hear Mom crying. The sound pierced me like a knife. Dad, I have to go. I'll call you later. Okay, Nick, we're so sorry. If there's anything we can do, nothing, but thank you. After I hung up, Cal and I sat in silence for a while. That was rough, he finally said. My parents are good people. They didn't deserve this blow. Neither did you. My phone buzzed again with a message from an unknown number. Nick, this is Jessica, Evan's ex. Can we talk? I showed the message to Cal, who let out a low whistle. This is getting more interesting by the minute. I dialed the number. Jessica picked up after the first ring. Nick, thank God. I wasn't sure you'd answer. What can I do for you, Jessica? I need to tell you something about Evan. About why I really kicked him out. I'm listening. Let's meet somewhere. This isn't a conversation to have over the phone. We agreed to meet at Murphy's Cafe an hour later. Jessica was already there when I arrived. She was sitting in a corner booth and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Jessica Torres was 28 years old, worked as a nurse at Millbrook Central Hospital, and had been dating Evan on and off for 2 years. She was a pretty girl with a girl-next-door look, but today she looked haggard and defeated. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. What did you want to talk about? Evan wasn't just cheating on me with Riley. He'd been doing it for months, with multiple women at the same time. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. How do you know? One night, about 3 weeks ago, I found his phone unlocked. There were text messages, photos, conversations on dating apps. He was basically running his own personal escort service. Jessica pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots she had managed to take. The messages were explicit, graphic, and involved at least 6 different women. Riley was just the latest in a long line, she continued. But to him, she was special because she was married. Evan has a thing for stealing other men's women. It's a game to him. Why are you telling me all this? Because you deserve to know what kind of person you're dealing with. And because... She hesitated. Because why? Because one of the other women he was seeing is married to a guy I work with. Her husband has no idea what's going on, and I can't stand watching him go through the same thing you are. I looked closely at Jessica's face. She was telling the truth. I could see it in her eyes. There's something else, she added. Evan was bragging about Riley to his friends, about how easy it was to steal her from you, and how you never suspected a thing. The cold knot in my stomach turned into a ball of ice. He was making jokes about it. Worse than that, he claimed that Riley never really loved you, that she only married you for financial security and was just waiting for someone better to come along. I leaned back in my seat, processing this information. It was one thing to know that Riley and Evan had betrayed me, It was quite another to learn that they had been laughing about it behind my back. Why should I believe you? Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a small digital voice recorder. Because I recorded him saying it. She pressed the play button, and Evan's voice filled the small space between them. The funniest part is that Nick actually thinks Riley loves him. He has no idea that she's just using him for his money and his house. She told me herself that she was never attracted to him, not even when they first started dating. She just needed stability, and he was stupid enough to provide it. Another voice, one I didn't recognize, said, "What's the long-term plan? Are you going to steal her away for good?" Evan's laugh was cruel and painfully familiar. Why would I want to do that? Riley is fun, but she's clearly not marriage material. She cheated on her husband with his own brother. What does that say about her character? No, I'm just enjoying the ride until something better comes along. Jessica stopped the recording. There's a lot more, but I think you get the point. I sat in a daze, trying to absorb what I had heard. It was bad enough to learn about Riley's infidelity, but to hear that she had never loved me and that our entire relationship had been built on lies and manipulation was unbearable. When was this recorded? 2 days ago, at Tommy's apartment. 2 nights ago, when I was sitting at home alone trying to figure out how to rebuild my life, Evan was on the other side of town, bragging about how he had destroyed it. Jessica, I need copies of everything you have. The messages, the photos, the recordings, all of it. Already done. She handed me a USB drive. It's all on there. Why are you doing this? She was silent for a moment, staring into her coffee cup. Because I loved him, she finally said. For 2 years I loved him, made excuses for him, and told myself he would change. And all that time, he was laughing at me behind my back, just like he's laughing at you. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, just be smarter than me. Don't let them get away with this. After Jessica left, I spent another hour in the cafe, studying the contents of the USB drive on my laptop. The evidence was devastating and exhaustive. Text message exchanges between Evan and Riley that had started during our honeymoon. Photos of them in compromising situations. Screenshots of Evan's conversations with other women, including detailed descriptions of his affairs. But it was the audio recordings that hit me the hardest. Evan had spent hours holding forth to his buddies about his conquests. A full 20 minutes were devoted to a blow-by-blow account of his first date with Riley. By the time I left Murphy's bar, I had a plan. It wasn't a kind or merciful plan, but it would ensure that Evan and Riley paid for what they had done. The annual fall festival was coming up in Millbrook that weekend. The whole town would be there, including everyone who had attended my wedding just 2 months earlier. It was time to share the news about how my married life was going. Saturday morning was cool and clear, perfect weather for a harvest celebration. By 9 o'clock, Main Street was bustling. Vendors were setting up their booths, families were staking out spots for the parade, and teenagers were trying to look too cool to enjoy a small-town festival. I had spent Friday evening preparing, and now I was fully armed. Cal picked me up at 10 with a cooler bag full of beer. His grin betrayed his anticipation of something big. "What's the strategy?" he asked as we drove downtown. No strategy, just the plain truth. That was what worried me. By the time we arrived, the festival was in full swing. The school band was rehearsing by the bandstand. Local politicians were shaking hands with constituents, and the air smelled of fried dough and apple cider. It was a typical, wholesome event that Riley had claimed to love, but secretly found unbearably boring. Last year, she had complained about how provincial it was, and said she wished we lived somewhere with a real culture. I should have listened to her then. Cal and I set ourselves up near the beer garden to watch the people. Soon, we were joined by Tommy Martinez, Dave Sullivan, and other guys from school. At first, the conversation was deliberately mundane. Work, sports, the weather. But I could see that they were dying to ask about the divorce. Finally, Tommy took the plunge. "Nick, I heard you and Riley are having some problems." I took a sip of my beer and smiled. "No problems. Everything is perfectly clear now." "What do you mean?" "I found out my wife was sleeping with my brother, so we're getting a divorce. It's pretty straightforward." A dead silence fell. Dave nearly choked on his beer. "With your brother?" Tommy whispered. "Yeah, with Evan. Turns out they've been having a great time together while I was at work." "God, Nick, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It's the best thing that could have happened. I'm glad I found out now, not after we had kids." People had started to gather around our group, drawn by the obvious tension. I saw many familiar faces, neighbors, co-workers, mutual friends. "How did you find out?" Dave asked. "Caught them at the Pulse Club on Wednesday night. They were practically doing it on the dance floor." Mrs. Patterson from the church gasped. "Oh my goodness, Nick, how terrible for you." "Terrible, Mrs. Patterson? No. Terrible would have been staying married to a woman who valued me so little that she cheated on me with my own brother. This is a liberation." I took out my phone and played one of the audio recordings Jessica had given me. "Do you want to hear what my brother really thinks of me?" Before anyone could object, I pressed play. Evan's voice rang out clearly in the sudden silence. "Nick was always the responsible, good son, but he's boring as hell. Riley told me she was never attracted to him. She married him because he was safe, not because she wanted him." The crowd around us was growing, and people were taking out their phones to record what was happening. For Millbrook, this was a drama that would be talked about for years. "Enough, Nick." Riley pushed through the crowd. Her face was flushed with anger and shame. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, trying to look casual, but her eyes were red and her hands were shaking. "Riley," I greeted her cheerfully. "I'm glad you came. I was just sharing some family news with our friends." "Stop it right now." "Stop what? Telling the truth? You think I'm the one making a scene?" I laughed, and a few people in the crowd laughed with me. "That's funny, coming from the woman who was grinding against her brother-in-law in a public nightclub." Riley went pale. "It wasn't like that." "Really? I have video evidence to the contrary." "Nick, please. Let's talk about this in private." "Why? Everyone here is a friend. These people were at our wedding, Riley. They gave us gifts and wished us happiness. Don't they deserve to know how it all ended?" Just then, I saw Evan hurrying toward us across the street. He looked panicked, and I didn't blame him. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, raising my bottle in a mocking toast. "Meet my brother, Evan, the man who helped my wife understand that wedding vows are just suggestions." Evan reached the edge of the crowd just as I finished. His face was a mixture of humiliation and rage. "Nick, that's enough." "Enough? I don't think so. Our friends and neighbors deserve to know what kind of people they're dealing with." "You're drunk," Riley snapped, but her voice wavered. "I'm not drunk. I'm honest. They're different things." I turned back to the crowd, which now numbered at least 50 people, including Riley's relatives and my co-workers. You know what the funniest thing is? I actually thought I was lucky with Riley. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Turns out I was just a consolation prize until something better came along. "That's not true," she whispered, barely audibly. "Then explain to everyone here why you've been sleeping with my brother for the last month." It's complicated. There's nothing complicated about it. You wanted intimacy with someone else, and you got it. The only complicated thing was lying to my face every single day. Evan finally found his voice. "Nick, you need to stop. You're embarrassing everyone." "I'm embarrassing everyone." "Evan, when you were bragging to your friends about how easy it was to steal my wife, were you worried about embarrassing anyone?" The crowd murmured. People were still recording everything. Within an hour, this would be all over social media. "I never said that." I took out my phone again. "I have recordings that prove otherwise." Evan went pale. "Where did you get those?" "From Jessica. She didn't like being cheated on either. Jessica may be many things, but she's not a liar. Unlike some people." Riley and Evan exchanged desperate glances, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, but it was too late. In a town like Millbrook, stories like this spread faster than a wildfire. "Do you want to know the saddest part?" I continued, addressing the crowd. "They're both living in the Route 9 motel right now, in separate rooms. I guess even they have some standards." People laughed. Riley's face contorted with humiliation. "Please, stop," she whispered through her tears. "Did you stop when I asked you to be faithful? When I asked you to respect our marriage? Did you remember your vows to love and cherish me, for better or for worse, until death do us part?" Riley was sobbing, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. Some of the onlookers were starting to look uncomfortable, but I wasn't finished yet. "I want to publicly thank Riley and Evan. They have taught me a valuable lesson about trust, fidelity, and the importance of choosing the right people for your life." I raised my bottle again. "To my ex-wife and my ex-brother, may they get exactly what they deserve." The crowd stood frozen, watching us like actors in a heavy drama. And thank you all for being the kind of neighbors who care about the truth. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle down on the table. And now, I'm going to go enjoy the festival. Have a nice day, Riley and Evan. Mine certainly will be. As I walked away, a buzz of voices rose behind me. Cal caught up with me, grinning widely. Nick, that was harsh. It was fair. Riley looked like she was about to faint. Good. Let her feel what it's like to be humiliated in public. We spent the rest of the day at the festival. Everywhere we went, people came up to me, offering support and barely concealed curiosity. By evening, the whole town knew what had happened. Riley and Evan had disappeared from the festival almost immediately after my speech, but the damage was done. In Millbrook, reputation meant everything, and their good names were now ruined. But I wasn't finished with them yet. The following week was a masterclass in social dynamics. Riley's reputation collapsed completely. She was asked to take an indefinite leave of absence because clients refused to work with her. Evan became a pariah in every establishment in town where he used to be a regular. And I became a kind of folk hero. People I barely knew stopped me on the street to offer their help. Neighbors brought me homemade casseroles. My construction company suddenly had a long waiting list of clients who were eager to hire the poor guy whose wife had cheated on him. It was almost enough to make me feel guilty. Almost. On Thursday evening, I was in my workshop when Cal barged in through the basement door without knocking. "Dude, you have to see this," he said, handing me his phone. On the screen was an open Facebook page. Riley had posted a long, rambling status that was a mixture of self-pity and an attempt to smear my character. I know there are rumors going around town about my personal life, and I feel the need to set the record straight. Yes, Nick and I are getting divorced, but it didn't happen because of my mistakes. Nick has anger management issues that he hid from everyone, including me. Throughout our marriage, he caused me emotional harm, controlled my finances, isolated me from my friends, and made me feel worthless. When I found comfort in a friendship with someone who actually treated me with kindness and respect, Nick flew into a rage and has been trying to destroy my reputation ever since. I am not the villain in this story. I am a victim of domestic abuse who has finally found the courage to speak out. I read the post twice, and with each word, my anger grew. "How many people have seen this?" I asked. Cal said the post had been up for 3 hours, had 47 comments, and most users didn't believe her. He was right. The comments were a mixture of skepticism and outright disbelief. "Riley, I've known Nick for 15 years. He's not capable of that kind of harm." "Emotional abuse? You were cheating on him, with his brother. Girl, you got caught. Own it and move on. This is pathetic, even for you." However, there were a few supportive comments, mostly from people who didn't know me well, or had their own grievances against men in general. "I believe you, Riley. Abusive people are good at hiding their true nature. It takes courage to speak out. Don't let them silence you. The way he humiliated you at the festival was definitely aggressive behavior." I handed the phone back to Cal. "She's trying to flip the script." "Yeah, but it's not working," he said. "Most people see right through her." But most wasn't all. If this lie gained traction, it could hurt my business and my reputation. In the current social climate, accusations of misconduct are taken seriously, as they should be. But false accusations can destroy an innocent person's life. "What are you going to do?" Cal asked. I said I was going to put an end to this. On Friday morning, I called Evelyn and explained the situation. Riley is trying to claim domestic violence, emotional distress, financial control, isolation, the whole standard package. Evelyn asked if I had evidence to refute these claims. I told her that I had proof that my wife had planned this defense even before I found out about the affair. I told the lawyer about the recordings that Jessica had given me. There were several clips where Riley and Evan discussed how to behave if they were caught. In one recording, she explicitly talked about her intention to claim abuse if things went badly. Her quote was, "If Nick finds out, I'll just say he was controlling and abusive." In these situations, they always believe the woman. Evelyn remarked that saying something like that out loud was astonishingly stupid. Riley wasn't as smart as she thought she was. The lawyer asked for copies of the audio files, and I said they were on their way. That afternoon, Evelyn called back with good news. She had reviewed the materials and called some of them absolute gold. They not only proved the intentionality of the false accusations, but also contained clear evidence of alienation of affection and intentional infliction of emotional distress. In practical terms, this meant we could sue Riley and Evan for damages. More importantly, these recordings would completely destroy her credibility if she tried to play the victim card. I asked how public we could make this process. Evelyn replied that legal filings are public records. That was exactly what I wanted. On Saturday morning, I found Evan's truck in my driveway. My brother was sitting on the porch and looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said when I opened the door. I said no. Evan said that Riley was planning to go to the police and get a restraining order against me. She claims I've been stalking and terrorizing her, and she says I'm dangerous. I laughed. Stalking her? I hadn't seen her since the festival. Evan argued that she had seen me drive past the motel and follow her on her way to work. I reminded him that I hadn't gone near the motel, and she didn't have a job anymore. Evan looked confused. She had told him she was still working. I clarified that she had been fired on Monday morning. My brother muttered that she had supposedly taken a leave of absence due to the stress of the divorce. I studied my brother's face. He looked genuinely surprised, which meant Riley was lying to him too. I asked when he had last actually talked to her. He insisted they were in constant communication. I asked about what, since she was feeding him a steady diet of lies about everything, from her job to my alleged stalking. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. I asked when she had last told him she loved him. Evan was silent for a long time. I took out my phone and played him the clip where Riley described her long-term plan. She said that Evan was fun, but wasn't husband material. He was broke, immature, and had a wandering eye. Nick, for all his faults, was stable and reliable. She planned to get the best of both worlds, security from me and excitement from Evan. And if it all fell apart, she would simply accuse me of cruelty and take half the assets in the divorce. Evan's face went pale as he heard his lover call him a temporary fling. "She used both of us," I said quietly. "You were her entertainment, and I was her retirement plan." Evan didn't want to believe me, but I suggested he listen to all the recordings. Jessica had given me hours of audio, and not once did Riley come off looking good. I handed him a USB drive with copies. "Take your time, listen to everything, and then decide if she's worth destroying our family over." Evan took the USB drive with trembling hands and asked why I was giving it to him. I said that despite everything, he was still my brother, and Riley was about to throw him under the bus to save herself. She planned to claim that he had seduced her, taken advantage of her emotional vulnerability, and that the whole affair was his idea. She would make herself out to be the victim and him the predator. Evan didn't believe she was capable of that, but I suggested he check her social media page. My brother left without a word, clutching the drive as if it held his salvation or his damnation, perhaps both. On Sunday at 6 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Evan, and from his voice I could tell he had been crying. "I listened to all of them," he said without preamble. "She never loved either of us, did she?" I confirmed that she hadn't. My brother lamented that he had destroyed his relationship with his family and his reputation for someone who had used him. He asked for forgiveness. I was silent for a long time, trying to understand my own feelings. It was too late, but it was the first time he had taken full responsibility. I asked what he was going to do. Evan said that Riley wanted him to corroborate her story about my cruelty. She believed that if they stuck together, people would believe them. But he refused. What she had said on the recordings about manipulation and lies had disgusted him. He realized what kind of person he had become by helping someone destroy her own husband. On Monday morning, Evelyn filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Riley and Evan, seeking damages for alienation of affection, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and defamation. The filing included transcripts of the most damaging recordings, where Riley's own words proved her plan to make false accusations from the very beginning. By Tuesday, the story had been picked up by the local newspaper. By Wednesday, it was trending on social media. By Thursday, Riley had hired a lawyer and was desperately trying to retract her claims. But it was too late. The recordings had become public. Now everyone could hear what she really thought of her husband, her lover, and the town she lived in. On Friday evening, I was having dinner at Murphy's when Riley walked in. She looked terrible, thinner, paler, with dark circles under her eyes that her makeup couldn't hide. She spotted me and came over to my table. She asked if she could sit down. I said it was a free country. She slid onto the bench across from me, her hands shaking. "I'm leaving town," she said quietly. I said, "Good." She added that her lawyer had warned her the lawsuit would follow her everywhere. I confirmed that she would be paying me for years. She looked silently at her hands, then admitted that I had a right to hate her. She claimed she hadn't meant for things to go this far. I countered that she had planned every step, and the recordings proved it. Riley tried to say that the audio files didn't tell the whole story, but I said they told enough. She whispered that she had loved me in the beginning. I corrected her. She had loved the idea of me, a stable, reliable man who would provide security and ask for nothing in return. But she had never loved me. She cried, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, and asked for forgiveness for everything. I said I knew what she meant. She was sorry she got caught, sorry there were consequences, sorry the plan didn't work. But she wasn't sorry for what she had done to me. If she had been truly sorry, she wouldn't have tried to destroy my reputation with lies. Riley had no answer to that. I asked where she was going. She said her sister lived in Phoenix and had agreed to let her stay until she got back on her feet. I wished her luck. She slowly stood up, as if carrying a heavy burden, and said I deserved better than her. I agreed. After she left, I sat in the booth for a while, finishing my dinner and thinking about the past 2 months. It felt like a lifetime had passed since that call from Cal, when I drove to the Pulse Club and found my wife in my brother's arms. The revenge had turned out exactly as I had hoped. Riley's reputation was destroyed, her career was over, and she faced years of financial payouts for her betrayal. Evan had lost his family, his friends, and his standing in the community. They had both gotten exactly what they deserved. But sitting there in Murphy's, watching ordinary people go about their ordinary lives, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. The cold, hard rage that had sustained me through the divorce, the public confrontations, and the legal battles was gone. I was free, not just from Riley and her lies, but from the bitterness and hatred that had consumed me. My phone buzzed with a message from Cal. "Beers at the Rusty Anchor." I texted back that I was on my way. As I walked out of the restaurant into the cool October evening, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. Riley was leaving tomorrow. Evan was moving to Portland to start over. I was finally alone with my thoughts and my future. It had been a rough 2 months, but it was over now. I had taken back my life, and I intended to make the best of it.